Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where Kahuna and I have got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 44, Episode 9. That's right, we're back to do power rankings. And firstly, I just would like to take this time to apologize for those that were wanting the power rankings last week. Obviously, Kahuna had it right on Heidi, and a lot of people messaged me saying that I was dodging Kahuna. Kahuna, it's fake news. I was on the move. As you can see, I've got a different backdrop here, and we just couldn't make it happen. And I'm happy to eat humble pie now.
Stocks are going up. Stocks are on the rise, baby.
Yeah,
I know
no,
Jake
Heidi,
said today he's still not buying, but
I'm all in on Heidi right now. I don't know, like I mean, I'm kind of a believer right now. I did say when I put her at the bottom that at that point it was because she had to play that advantage, and the advantage put her in a bad spot. But the way she bounced back and the way that she got Yam Yam to still want to work with her after that, it is pretty admirable, I've got to say. And I'm very impressed by her social game and her strategic read in the game. Where at this point, I've got to say, even though I did tell you people today who I think is winning the season based on the edit, but I mean, you can't count Heidi out.
no, I mean, we when you consider, like, for the longest time all she had was that she made fire, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden we see, like, strategy, we see social, we see the luck that's involved in winning as well by finding an idol. Like, seems things seem to be going her way, and she's trending in the right direction at the right time of the game for sure.
Yeah, well, let's get straight into the power rankings. We have to do a bit of a review here because we haven't looked at the rankings since that week that we had Heidi in the edge, because I was adamant I did want us to get two right in a row, which we did end up getting it right, but just for a completely different person. But I think the pressure is on for us to continue to get it right when it comes to these players. We had Brandon second lowest on our rankings last week, and he was on the edge. He was voted out. Any final thoughts on Brandon's game before we get into the rankings there from you, Kuna? Because I don't think you had an opportunity to talk to him being voted
Mm.
out.
Look, I don't think Brandon played a bad game. I think, he was the logical choice of the big physical competitor. Once you get to merge, it's always going to happen. And he was in the Soka Rut war that's taking place. And Tika chose sides. Brandon wasn't on it. And probably because he is that physical threat. So to me, it was an obvious choice. It made sense. And when you look at the competitors left, there's really only one of those physical players that is traditionally the type that would be targeted. And who knows, he could be next to go as well, leaving the likes of Franny to be the absolute challenge beast.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to have to talk about him in our power rankings very soon. But I do want to also say goodbye to this week's fallen angel, or in my mind, he's a fallen angel because I really enjoyed Kane on this season. Now, if we did do the power rankings last week, I would say there would have been a good chance we would have put him pretty low after Yam Yam and Carson played double agents and pretended to vote with the right two members. You didn't get an opportunity to talk to that. Were you impressed by the level of gameplay, or is it just more of the same? Because we've seen Tika really dominate strategically so far in this season.
I was, because to me it was a question at the time with the edit from last week, was did
Mm.
they actually do it on purpose in order to look like they were still on Ratu's side? And then I'm really glad that we get the follow up this week where Janja's like, yeah, that's why I did it. And that is a perfect play to be able to, you've got the right numbers, so I don't need to do this. Let's keep this open where I may be able to still maneuver. Perfect play by them, and which is why the Three Stooges are kind of running the game at the moment.
Mm. Now, Kane, he came, he saw, he didn't conquer. He had a fun time out there pretending to be a player in Dungeons and Dragons, and he was a lovable character, but he just always seemed to be that couple of steps behind the eight ball. He voted incorrectly in the beginning against Brandon. Obviously, Brandon played an idol to save himself. And then here he gets duped by his fellow nerd, someone he thought he could work with in the game, and Carson. And again, he's left up Shit's Creek without a paddle, really, in this episode, and gets voted out. And I will say, it saddens me to say this, Kahuna, but I feel like Kane is going to be one of those forgotten survivors that we probably won't see coming back.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. A lovable dude for sure, and certainly, fun, but didn't do anything to like really cement his place in, survivor memory kind of thing. Like when you say he
Mm,
won't be remembered a couple of seasons, unfortunately for him, he didn't do enough to make that the case. And when it comes to survivor, you have to make yourself undeniable, memorable enough that Jeff wants to bring you back, because there's a chance that if you do in a couple years and you get called back, or if there's ever the second chances where there's a live draft and your name's on the board, and you don't want people going, who? Like, that's the worst thing for TV. You're like, who is that again? Oh
yeah.
yeah, like, I hope that's not the case, because I did like him, but at the same time, he didn't do anything for me either. Like, he was fun, but what game did he play?
Yeah, listen, I just think that the new age of Survivor has got so many heavy hitters, so many big characters that have played in recent seasons that he's going to be forgotten in that mix of players. And then we've also had, since David versus Goliath, maybe even before that, Ghost Island, so many great players that have never returned to play again. So if you look at him compared to some of the Rick Devons of the world, which I think he could fall in the same archetype, I just don't see him getting the call in front of them, which is sad because I really enjoyed seeing Kane on this season. But sadly, it didn't go his way. Maybe he should have played in a more boring and predictable season, Kona,
Yeah, but if given the choice, make it
if
easy
given the
on you.
choice.
Yeah. I mean, the producers are doing a lot this season, and someone that's
Mm.
not adaptable or willing, or big enough as far as moves go to counteract that, is going to get swallowed up by what is eventually some very big characters and some very big production moves as well.
All right, Kona, enough of the time wasting. Let's get straight into the power rankings for those players that are still left in the game. And let's see if we can get it right for a third time when we're putting somebody on the edge as someone that could potentially be voted out next in the game. Now, starting off right at the bottom, and I believe she's been hovering around the bottom ever since we started doing this power rankings, is Miss Jamie. And she at this point has lost her fake idol in the game. Luckily for her, she's not going to be playing the fake idol. But she is really out at the moment. And it was funny seeing both her and Lauren next to each other there at the bottom, talking after this episode about the fact that they were always going to split the votes, but saying that Brandon didn't want to do it. But they wanted people to know that they were smarter than what we probably thought they were, and they were going to split the vote. Now, I don't know if they were really going
Yeah,
to
of
split the
course.
vote. I don't know if they, I
After the
mean,
fact,
hindsight,
it's easier to say that
hindsight's
after, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. It was a funny moment to see them trying to like save face. But I mean, you can't blame them. At the end of the day, if you do make it to the end, you want to have a chance of getting the votes and not looking like you were completely fooled. But, I don't know. I've not seen anything from Jamie and her game being isolated now with Lauren. Only two of them from the Ratu tribe left in the game. Maybe there is now an opportunity for Tika to take a shot at Soka, but I just don't see Lauren or Jamie making a run for it at this point.
I mean, the only way I could see Jamie going far is because they see her as a goat. I don't know if anyone respects her game and therefore she's not dangerous, and other people
Mm.
may become targets before her. Because that's how I see her. I don't see her as a threat at all. Even if she gets to the end, no one's looking at anything she's done and giving her $1 million because of it, as far as I'm concerned. So to me, I've still got her at the bottom. Um, I've actually put her third from the bottom in my own head, but she's still on the edge for me for sure. As far as whether she goes next week, I don't know, but she's certainly not in Soul Survivor getting any potential to win at all. I don't think.
I agree with you 100%. And now we have to think about Lauren's game, who is in front of her at this stage. Lauren is someone who has been a lot more vocal in the game. She is someone that at times have tried to take control of the game. And I guess losing Brandon so early on and now losing someone in Kane, she really, again, is someone that is seen almost as a leader figure of that Ratu tribe, but she's on her own. And I feel like she is vulnerable. She doesn't even have, I don't know if she ended up even when she gave the extra vote to Jamie. But do you know if Jamie actually played it? It looked like Jamie took it out and played it in this last tribal council.
Yeah, I think it was wasted as well, or burned as well. So
Yeah.
they they've used both, or didn't use the fake idol, but it's gone. Can't even give the perception of having it. I think maybe for Jamie, like, I think the move for her this week is to say, "I had an idol. Kane walked away with it. It's gone." Or does she still pretend that
Mm.
she has it to protect herself?
Well, the bigger
Because
question
then they
is,
just
will people
split.
believe her? Will
Yeah,
people believe her? Like, I mean, it's the right thing to say that Kane had the idol and he walked away with it. But, if I'm a player and I'm out there and I don't know that for a fact, I would still be targeting Jamie. And I think the fact that people just know that she had something at this point makes her still, in my mind, a bigger target than Lauren. So if I had to look at and this is the question I was going to ask you, do you think Jamie sits ahead of Lauren or behind Lauren at this point? I mean, it is tomato at this stage and we're splitting hairs, but I do
yeah.
think she's still got potentially a bigger target on her back because she has a potential idol.
That would be the determining factor, how she plays that off. If she's
Mm.
still a target because of she has to be below Lauren in and of themselves as, you know, my faculties, my gameplay, everything about me, I rank Lauren ahead. She seems a little bit more capable. She seems a lot more capable than Jamie, but that threat of the idol could be the thing that puts Lauren ahead of her for me.
Like the one thing I could see Lauren potentially doing is that Franny is the only person at this stage who seems to be awoken to the fact that Tika is playing a middle ground and has a lot of power in the game. So maybe someone like Lauren, who is also a proactive player, could find common ground with Franny in the future. And this is very hypothetically, but I mean, I could see a potential ally there if they could reach across the aisle and start working together to get rid of some of those Tika numbers. Not that I think it's actually going to happen, because so much of the edit is telling us that one of the TK3 is probably winning at this stage because it's such a positive edit that they're consistently getting. But Franny is like that main person, and we'll maybe leave that for later when we talk about Franny. But I'm happy with Jamie and Lauren at the bottom there. Let's move on to a person that I was adamant that we had to put her on the edge because I didn't like the fact that the way that the idol or the advantage was played on that round, I was fearful for her. And we know now that Yam Yam is a spiteful person. Like he wants to
Mm.
send people home that has written his name down, but somehow Heidi has been able to calm Yam Yam down, and he doesn't seem upset at Heidi at all.
Well, it helps when you survive it, survive, right? A vote, and you're still there to play. Um, I mean, again, that I said the Puerto Rican thing could be real. It could be real, and it's coming
Mm,
into play a little bit. I don't know if that's part of it, but I mean, Heidi seems to be a little bit more able to socially like adapt to things like that and really get people on her side. Um, she in this episode she didn't want to, but she put herself out of the immunity challenge for Rice in for the tribe and is kind of winning people over or trying to in that regard. So
mm.
um yeah, like stocks are on the rise. Last week, integral to the Brandon vote out, really shone in that episode. And now, like with 8 people left, she's got an idol. Like her stocks have to be like skyrocketing.
She's definitely climbed into, in my opinion, Spy Shack, potentially someone that I could still see as an outside winner. When I'm looking at who is ahead of her, and we'll be talking pretty soon about that, I do believe that we'll talk about this one on one as we talk about the people who's in front of Heidi, because I'm definitely moving her into Spy Shack. But we'll start off with Danny. Danny's going to definitely be below Heidi at this stage. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that? Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's talk about
absolutely.
Danny's game.
Yep.
Let's talk about Danny's game, right? So Danny at this point, he played an idol, and he was very happy about the fact that he got it right, which is very difficult to do in the new age of Survivor. I believe it's only the
Hmm.
second time that we've seen a successful idol play here, but it could easily be undermined by those players that knew that he was always in the majority. Like Carson and Yam Yam and Carolyn all knew that the plan was always to get rid of Brandon. So in reality, he's only made a bigger target of himself. Not only is he a threat physically, but he's now also a threat with a bit of a resume because he's played an idol, and all of that for very little gain if he was to sit next to the people at the end that were in on the plan from the beginning. So what has he really gained by that move, Kahuna?
Look, if I could rank people based on things that I enjoyed the most, Danny would
Mm,
probably be at number one. Because last week he pulled the fake fart thing on Jeff. Jeff, Jeff,
I forgot
one
about
of the
that.
greatest. I couldn't believe what I saw. And then this week, I know you would have loved this. Did you notice what he did when he went to get a vote?
No, I didn't. Let me
He
know
walked
again.
up
Like,
to the parchment, McGregor walk.
Oh,
and then
yes.
he did a vote. That alone, I was like, Danny. But he's also done a lot of things on the island that I think I
Has
don't
alienated
know.
people, right?
Yes, like one thing I noticed last week was when he lost the challenge, Jam went to console him and he kind of brushed him off in his anger at himself for the game. And he kind of did it again this week, not at anyone else, but when he lost to Franny, he shouted the F word to himself, and he's got that bit of sore loserness to him. He's got a bit of temper
I
about
think
him.
he's competitive. I think he's
Yeah, he's
competitive.
very competitive, but he can't
Yeah.
control that competitiveness, and it
Mm,
comes out. I don't know if that's, noticed by the other people, it was noticed by me, it was noticed by the editors to leave it in there, and
mm,
the fact that, there was also one scene in this episode which I thought was so funny when they were talking about, they were having the group discussion and kind of getting to know, and someone was like, "Who hasn't felt like on the outside, or a loser kind of thing?" With Carolyn, like her story and all that, so touching, and everyone
yeah.
put their hand up, and Danny's there like, hand down. He's just
Yeah.
at the start of the season, he said, "I'm a jock. I'm a bro. I'm the type of person that people don't normally like, but that's why I'm going to overcompensate with how nice I am and funny and goofy." And I think
Yeah.
when you have no food and no rice and you're 17 days into a challenge like that, that ability to overcompensate how broy and jockey you are starts to come down a little bit, or you can't compensate as much. And I'm wondering if the cracks are starting to show he may
We even
become.
saw it.
Yeah, we
We
saw
even
it.
saw it with well, you're not going to remember this because I don't think you watched this season, but we mentioned it in the podcast earlier today that a comparison for him out there is Jonathan, who played in Survivor Season 42, who was probably the biggest physical broy alpha guy we've ever seen, and he was extremely aware of how people would perceive him in the game. And in his season, it was even worse because there was no other alpha male there except for him. But he started to crack a little bit towards the end as well, and was starting to have a shorter temper with people
Mhm.
and getting annoyed with people a little bit more. And I think it's just natural. But people want to paint him as a villain. They want to say, oh, he's this alpha male macro guy, and we don't like that. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a really good
No,
guy. I think it's like you said, it's the hunger pains. It's the like I know for a fact I could see a little bit of myself in him because if I'm not eating tuna, I'm going to be grumpy. Like I used to work at this contact center where, funny enough, one of the team managers that were working on the floor with me, she was South African as well, and she used to always tell me when I was starting to get grumpy, she's like, "You need to go have some lunch, you need to go eat, and then come back." Basically. So I could see myself very easily falling into that trap.
they were all in that category this week. I think hangry is the term that people like to use,
Mm,
and I think that doesn't help Danny's cause. And like I said, he's the physical threat. He's always at the end of challenges, even if he hasn't won them yet. He's pushing towards the end, and eventually he'll get one of them. And that's just going to make him more and more of a threat. So I think he has to be one of the next to go, and I've put him in the edge of extinction on the edge. Sorry, edge of
I've
extinction
got
on
him at
the
the
edge.
bottom.
Yeah,
I've got him right at
me
the
too.
bottom,
I've
and
got him right at the bottom.
the reason I've got him right at the bottom at the moment is because Carolyn has already mentioned his name. She really wanted to get rid of Danny this round. She didn't want to get rid of someone from Ratu. And I think Carolyn is going to get away. I think Carson told her, okay, we'll get him next time. But this round, we have to go after Ratu. They've got all the advantages and they think we're with them. So we've got the element of surprise on our
Mhm.
hands where they maybe won't play those advantages and we can get rid of one of them. But I think next round, they're definitely switching it back up on Danny. I think they made a point of showing Danny being dismissive to Franny when Franny said that Tika needs to be dealt with. And I think they did that for a reason. Like the editors leave those things in there. So if I was a betting man, I would be putting most of my chips on Danny to be going home next week.
I'm the same. I've got him right at the bottom, and think he's probably going next week.
Yeah. All right. Now we need to move on to Franny. Franny is still sitting ahead of Heidi on this ranking at current. Do you think that is still an appropriate place for her? When you look at Franny's game right now, I've been really impressed by Franny. Like, I think, again, and this is nothing about, like, I love the fact that she found love out there, and I'm not against the romance of her and Matt, but I've enjoyed her more without Matt than with Matt, because when Matt was the whole story was about their romance. Now we're seeing a little bit of Franny, the person who's still trying to find herself, trying to be comfortable in her own skin, like Carolyn is, the person who underestimated her challenge abilities when she went out there, and she's beasting it out there. And I'm kind of shouting for her because she's a bit of an underdog and she's aware of what's going on. And I think she's our only hope to knock out Tika at this stage.
Yeah, Franny had a good episode. She obviously winning the challenges. And man, she gives good face, doesn't she? When she's doing the challenges, her face is so emotive. There was at one point I was like, wow, they've been up there for ages a bit. Like, this looks like at least an hour just on Franny's face. And then Jeff goes, you've been up there for 5 minutes. I was like, oh, I was like, wow, Franny's going through it. She can't
Yeah.
last. Her feet are shaking. Everyone's pointing it out, and she's still, stood up there longer than Danny in some really, really horrible circumstances. And
Yeah, I was
then
impressed.
to have them show her calling out the right um, alliance that is running the Tika thing to Danny and actually nailing what the right thing should have been, because Tika is running the show and she's aware of it. She saw it. She called her shot, and it, got put down by the alpha male, if you will. And that's a good look for Franny, that she's seeing the moves and she's seeing what's there. She just didn't have the cachet to be able to do anything about it this week. But that's not a bad thing at all. I have Franny in Spy Shack, but I do have her behind Heidi based on what Heidi's been doing.
I actually do agree with you. And I think the thing that gives Heidi that slight edge to Franny is that Franny's superpower in the game is known to everyone. She's a threat to challengers. They're going to want to deal with that sooner rather than later, especially when Danny is gone in the game. Where Heidi, her superpower is the fact that she found a hidden immunity idol and she's told absolutely no one about it. So she's got a bit of an ace up her sleeve that she can use later in the game. Plus, she seems to have that Puerto Rican connection with Yam Yam in the game. She seems to be in good place with him. So I do like her social game and her standing at the moment a little bit better than Franny's, but I do agree with you that Franny is 100% in Spy Shack as well. Now let's move on to a person that, you've been high on this person from the start. I've been telling you, let's keep it real. Let's look at where this player is in the game at that point, not the edit, because I agree with you. The edit has told us from a very early stage that we should look at Yam Yam. And we've always heard Yam Yam's story. We know where he's from. I even brought up that episode where him and Carolyn had the Sarah vote and he was fooled by Carolyn. She outplayed him there. But we heard Yam Yam's part of the story a little bit more. And I felt like the editors wanted us to agree more with Yam Yam than Carolyn in that moment, the way that they portrayed that episode. So I've always known edit-wise, rock solid edit. But I just couldn't see it in regards to where his game was up until this point. But it's very hard to deny that he is definitely in the Soul Survivor category. I made my first bold claim for the season in saying that I believe he's the winner of this season. It's around the same time that I said back when Gabler was playing, me and Jake were looking at each other and we were like, I think Gabler could win this season, but we were a little bit more uncertain about Gabler. At this stage, I feel like it's very evident that Yam Yam is probably going to get to the end, and if he does get there, will probably win the game.
Yeah, I think Carolyn and Jam Jam obviously working together in lockstep so far. If they both go to the end, I think Carolyn arguably has a better argument to make, but I don't think they're going to believe it as much as they would Jam Jam, right?
Man, and that's
Because
going to be sad. Like if that happens,
yeah,
it's going to be the whole. Not that I'm saying Yam Yam isn't great, but like if you really look at it, like who's played the better game at this point? Like objectively, it feels like it's been Carolyn for the most part, right? Yam Yam's game, even the sneaky move that he did last week to vote with Ratu when they knew the idol was going to get played was all because of Carson's connections. Like he's played off both of them more than, I don't feel like he's done it all on his own, if that makes sense.
the thing that goes from Jam Jam's side for sure is that his revenge list doesn't miss. And he can go literally say, you voted for me, you're on the bench. You voted for me, you're on the bench next. And boom, 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 boom. 4 in a row now we've seen. They voted for him. They're now riding Pine. And he can get up and actually tell them to their face, this is what I did. Carolyn doesn't
Yeah.
have that black and white, very clear, like he's done it emotionally kind of thing, but it's worked. And the fact that it did just puts big ticks on his, in his column kind of thing. Personally, I think Carolyn has played a better game, but are they going to see it? Is the jury going to see it? And that's the problem. The only thing, if are we kind of doing a combo now? We're talking about Carolyn at the same time,
You're
maybe.
talking about it, and the way that you're talking about it makes it sound like Yam Yam is ahead of Carolyn at this stage. And I find it hard to disagree with you, even though I don't want to agree with you because Carolyn is my favorite from this season. Like, I'm really enjoying what she's giving us. I think she's playing a masterful game. And she, like I said today, she's playing the intentional Fabio, where she's pretending or not pretending, but she is a goofy person by nature, but she's playing that part of her personality up so people will underestimate her. But the real big risk for Carolyn is when it comes to the end and she has to tell them what she did from day one. Will people believe her? Like you said, will they take her serious enough to give her the money? And that, I am similar to you. I'm worried. I think Yam Yam, if it comes down to the end, Yam Yam has got a superior social game, and the social game, sadly in Survivor, like sadly and good, I mean, you, depending on how you look at it, so the social game is the biggest part. Like, if people like you, they'll vote for you. And I think that people really like Yam Yam.
It's going to come down to the selling. Who can tell a better story? Because I think the producers are telling us a beautiful story about Carolyn. Like I actually, at the moment, based on where they are today and what we're given by the edit, I would have Carolyn ahead of Jam Jam in Soul
Okay.
Survivor, because of what we've seen so far. I just know, like, the way it plays out. Do you, you know, if these two people are standing in front of you and giving you the pitch, and it comes down to that cell, we haven't seen what Carolyn might be able to do with them. What we have seen is that a lot of people have disrespected her, but they're not there anymore, right? So maybe the
They're
ones
all
that
gone.
they're all gone. So even in the jury, the people that are in the jury are going to be there long enough with Carolyn to hopefully see more. But what we saw this week from Carolyn, I love that we saw her with a great read again and actually calling out Jam Jam on the Kane thing when he's saying Kane is such a threat. He's so strategic. She's like, no, he's not. Like, which I thought was great because she's right. And Jam Jam just wanted it because it's his revenge list. He's building his
Yes.
resume, and she's saying, what are you talking about? He's not a threat. He's like doing nothing. And she saw that and called him out on it instead of just going along with it, which is so Carolyn, which is great. And then we get that another beautiful, touching confessional package montage thing for her that we don't get to see very often, the way they do it. And they're really quite painting her in a picture to the point where, I don't know if you noticed, but the end of that whole little segment for Carolyn, they were on it wasn't the same rock as Matt fell off, but it was still a dangerous, scary
Yeah, I
rock.
saw that. Yeah.
And I was like, but the way it ended is Carolyn was standing at the top of it with her arms stretched out, almost Messiah like. And you know who was sitting on the rocks at her feet? Jam
Yam
Jam.
Yam. Yeah,
And I was like, oh, was that something? It's either going to be that's the end, Carolyn raising her hands in victory, Jam Jam at her feet, or that's the twist. That's the tragic, should have
yeah.
won and didn't kind of thing. And I don't know which way it's going to play out. I would have Carolyn ahead of Jam Jam at the moment.
Okay. Okay. I don't feel strong enough either way between the two of them at the moment to fight you on this, but
Yeah, me neither,
there's
to be
one.
honest with you.
Yeah, and there's one person I feel very strong about not being at the top anymore, and that's Carson. I feel like Carson has fallen to the bottom
Yeah.
of Soul Survivor. Now, still Soul Survivor, and I just want to say, even though I'm so high on Carolyn, and I'm really going and like, I mean, it would be disappointing if Carolyn doesn't win. I love the Tika 3. I think Tika 3
Yeah.
is one of the most fun alliances we've had in a long time. So a win for any of the Tika 3 to me would be a very satisfying end to a season right now. So I'm very much for it. But Carson's problem right now is that he's been sick for a while. His energy's been low. He's been lying in camp, just trying to survive. And I feel like maybe he's losing a couple of rounds, and this game is going so quick where if you are out there struggling for 2 or 3 days, that's like an old survivor almost 12 days or 9 days of
Yeah.
gameplay that you're missing and you're not a part of, and people won't remember that you were at the forefront running the game. So I'm worried that Carson is becoming, for a lack of a better word, a little bit of a goat now that can get pulled towards the end, where they'll be like, oh well, at times he wasn't really that great, but his combination of connections with us as a Tika 3 is what got him through the game, and it's really a disservice to his game at this point because I still think Carson is the biggest reason that the Tika 3 operates so well. They even in this episode once again made a point of showing that Carson is the one that keeps the Tika 3 together. When he wasn't there, Yam Yam and Carolyn were coming after each other. Bring him back in, they suddenly can work together. And he is the one that's got the connections in the Soka side where it seems like Daniel really likes him. And he's also got that connection in the Ratu tribe where Brandon and Kane really liked him. And I even feel like Lauren has been sort of trusting him quite a bit. So he has played a masterful game, is my point. But I'm really worried that this illness he received while being out there is something that is going to hamstrung, if that's the right word, his game at the end.
Yeah, Carson in sports is what's referred to as a locker room guy or a glue guy. The guy that keeps everyone together in the right direction, right? And he's doing that for Tika as what he's pushing, but he also played a little bit of I'm everyone's friend, every man friend. And you said that that could come to haunt him later when he starts making decisions about which way he's going to lie rather than aligning with everyone. And that's still always a potential downfall for him as well. So I have to put him below, yeah, Carolyn and Jam Jam because he's not looking great. The edits kind of dropped him in favor as well. Like he's not getting
Yes.
the same shine in that. So I think he is in the top because he's the top three, and they're all in it. I think if he does get to the end, like if I'm talking about that, the same thing that Carolyn may not be able to articulate her argument, Carson 100% will be able to. So he's got a shot. He's got a chance. He may be able to do it more. I think Jam Jam would be able to do it more like funnily, more charismatically. That Carson will be able to nail the specifics and the technical breakdown, and it just depends on what goes over with this jury, really well, and we'll find out. But for now, I'm happy. Yeah, that's the spot that he 100% deserves to be based on what they're showing us.
Yeah, there you go. We've got our rankings locked in all within 30 minutes here on the podcast. Obviously, there's less and less people now that we get to talk about. And next week, there'll be even one person less. But, if, we're to be believed, it's going to be either Lauren, Jamie, or Danny who's going to have their torch snuffed next week. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that the top three, the Tika 3, are definitely the three to watch out for. One of them will win this game, in my humble opinion. But we've got two outsiders who I'm very happy with, and that is Heidi and Franny. Potentially, they could still cause an upset, still get towards the end. But time is starting to run out because we only have 8 players left in the game now, and 3 out of those 8 players are going to be Tika players. So very soon, Tika
Two
may
of them,
be
two
half of the
players have
tribe.
idols. Two players have idols as well.
Yeah, so we've got Heidi with an idol, and we've got Carolyn with an idol for
Still.
those that are listening from home and that may have forgotten because there's been 20 different advantages this season. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Lastly, I wanted to ask you, Kahuna, before we finish the power rankings, one of the things that really stood out for me was Yam Yam this episode being the voice of the fans, bringing out twice things that I've said for a long time. Firstly, spoke about the fact that they had a down day, which meant that we got to see a little bit more of that social interaction and the beautiful Carolyn moment that you spoke of, and seeing them play I Spy out there as well, which was a lot of fun. I forgot what Yam Yam called it, the local Puerto Rican version of it, but that was a fun moment to see. And then also him talking about the rice and the fact that just getting a little bit of food makes them actually think on their feet and makes for more entertaining TV. It's really good to see that Yam Yam is pointing this out, and somehow the editors, the producers, they're still not getting it.
It's funny that, for thousands of millennia, people have known that you need fuel in order to run, right? You put petrol in your car, you put food in your body, and for your synapses and brain to actually work strategically, to be able to perform physically, to be able to do the mental gymnastics needed for a game as complex as Survivor, you need like a source of energy. And it can't
Yeah.
just be pure will and determination because at some point the body shuts down. And and you did say in the podcast today, like when they're just lazing around the beach because that's all they can physically do, it makes for a much less, interesting TV product. And when we talk about, I never thought about this before, but the fact that you say, when we talk about Australia at the moment is kind of better than the US version in a lot of people's opinions. they very much go on the physical side as well, maybe a little bit too
Yeah.
much skew in that way, but it's because they're able to do that stuff with the food provisions that they're given. It's never a matter of like we're starving here, Jeff, and now we need to negotiate whether we compete in an immunity challenge. Like,
What is that? Yeah.
yeah, you're taking away their chance at immunity so they can eat like, and not
Yeah.
extra food, not a reward challenge, just rice. And I don't know why
Yeah.
he wants to make Survivor into Saw.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's very very frustrating to watch. And like you said, even on Australian Survivor, even though they get rice, no one is walking away from Australian Survivor having gained weight. Like all of them lose weight. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the bare minimum, but it's at least enough for them to be able to put two coherent sentences together and to create some entertaining moments for us on the TV show while they're out there. But I know I'm beating a dead horse on that one. I've said it many a times here on the podcast, but I wanted to hear your opinion on that. But for those that got to the end here of this live recap or power rankings that we just did, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to show support to the channel. There is potentially some more shows that are going to be coming to the channel as well. I don't want to immediately say what that is, but there is an interesting show or two that we're keeping an eye on. And I think that, you may see a little bit more of Kahuna running his own show in the future and being the host with a co-host as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Apologies in advance. Apologies in advance.
Nah, they're gonna love you, mate. You're doing a bloody good job. So I know people will love seeing you also host another show here on the channel, because we want to continue to add more TV shows to the channel. We both love reality TV. We love talking to each other about it, but sometimes you got to divide and conquer and go look for some extra talent out there. So by the way, if there's shows that you guys are very interested in and you want us to cover it, you can always send us an email to the Nullified Take at gmail.com to let us know what those shows are. I can't promise we can do everything, but we definitely have our eyes on a few different things that are dropping. Obviously, I've been looking at Traders for quite a while. I know that the Traders are now currently casting for their second season in the US. They're also currently casting, I believe, for Traders season 2 in Australia. So those would be shows that definitely I'd be interested in covering in the future. And then a few more that is coming. So keep an eye on the channel, subscribe. That helps us. That shows us that you love what we do here. You want to support a new up and coming podcast all the way from down under. And we love talking to you guys as well. So we'll try and do more lives in the future. In fact, myself and Kuna will be back by the time this drops. We probably would have already done it, but we will be doing another live recap and review for the challenge as well, for the Challenge World Championship, episode 9 as well. So keep an eye out for that. If you watch this at a later stage, go and check our channel out. It should have dropped already as well. Please consider liking, hitting the notification bell. That way you get informed the next time that we go live. But for now, that's it. Grab your torches, head back to camp, and Kuna and I will catch you next week. Bye.